Hope everyone's enjoying a little post-Christmas chill. Maybe some leftovers or a little online shopping.
Yeah, some relaxation.
Exactly. But for some things, we're not so chill yesterday
That's right.
because ChatGPT went down.
Oh, yeah.
Not exactly the holiday spirit, right? I mean,
Yeah.
for anyone who maybe isn't, living on the internet 24/7, ChatGPT, it's that AI chatbot everyone's talking about.
It is.
Students are using it, professionals, even just folks messing around for fun, right?
Right.
We saw it in the sources you sent.
Yeah, it really has become incredibly popular, and the use cases are really diverse.
And you sent me a ton of articles and social media posts about this outage, and it seems like everyone's kind of scrambling
Yeah.
to figure out what was going on.
Yep. Yeah.
I mean, some of these reactions were pretty funny. People thinking they've been banned or joking about ChatGPT going on like a digital vacation.
I saw that one too. Needed a little break after the holidays.
Right. But also, some folks were seriously freaking out. Like, imagine relying on this thing for your work and suddenly it's just gone poof.
Right. Like your most reliable colleague just vanished.
Okay, so let's get beyond the memes here.
Right.
What really happened and what does it tell us?
Well, so OpenAI, the company behind ChatGPT, they confirmed on their status page that there were high error rates. And this wasn't just for ChatGPT itself. It was also for the API and even Sora, their new text-to-video generator.
Hold on. Can we break that down a little? I mean, for those of us who haven't been, living and breathing AI these past few weeks, what does that actually mean? Like the difference between ChatGPT being down versus the API going down and what even IS Sora?
Okay, yeah. So think of ChatGPT as like the storefront. Anyone can walk in and use it directly, right? But the API, that's more like the backdoor access for developers. They use it to build ChatGPT's abilities into their own apps and services. So for them, the outage meant their entire workflow was disrupted.
Yeah.
And then you have Sora, which is basically this really cool tool that lets you create videos just by typing out what you want to see.
Wow.
So the fact that all of these were affected shows just how widespread the impact of this outage really was.
Okay, so it wasn't just students freaking out about their essays.
Right.
This was hitting businesses, developers, the whole 9 yards.
Yeah, that was a big one.
And OpenAI, they blamed it on upstream provider, which honestly sounds kind of vague.
Uh-huh.
What does that even mean in this context?
It basically means that even giants like OpenAI, they rely on other companies for essential services. So imagine, for example, their cloud storage provider had a little hiccup. Suddenly, ChatGPT can't access its own memory, and boom, outage.
Oh, okay.
It's like a chain reaction, right? It's a reminder that even the most sophisticated tech is built on this network of interconnected systems.
So one weak link can bring the whole thing down.
Yeah, pretty much.
Which kind of makes you think about all those user reactions, right? I mean, some of the stuff people were posting was hilarious, but also kind of alarming.
Oh, yeah.
Like, what were some of the standouts?
Well, we saw everything from panic about deadlines to existential dread about people not being able to think without ChatGPT.
Wow.
One user even said they couldn't work on their free light novel.
Yeah.
Who knew that was even a thing?
Right. It's amazing and slightly terrifying how many different ways people are using this.
Definitely.
But it also makes you think, if people are that dependent on it, what happens the next time it goes down? Is this healthy?
That's the million-dollar question.
It is.
This outage really exposed just how reliant we've become on this one AI tool. And it gets even more complicated when you consider that even people paying for ChatGPT Pro at $200 a month were also affected.
Ouch. So even a premium price tag doesn't guarantee uptime.
It seems not. And, this wasn't the first ChatGPT outage.
Right.
And it probably won't be the last. So if people are really integrating this into their professional lives, relying on it for income, critical tasks, what kind of backup plans do they have?
Good point. So we've established maybe putting all our eggs in the ChatGPT basket isn't the smartest move, but did anyone in the sources mention what they were using while it was down? Any alternatives?
They did. Some folks were talking about using Claude, another AI chatbot, known for its creative writing. Others mentioned A-Dungeon, which is great for like interactive stories.
Okay.
But the question is, are they truly viable replacements?
Right.
I guess we'll have to dive deeper into that a little later.
Okay, so maybe there are some life rafts out there in the digital sea.
Maybe.
But this whole situation makes you wonder about the bigger picture,
Well,
What does it say about the future of AI and our relationship with it?
that's where things get really interesting, and that's what we'll be exploring next.
So, big picture, this ChatGPT outage, was it just a blip, or is it, a sign of things to come? What does it really tell us about how much we rely on AI these days?
Yeah, I mean, that's the big question, isn't it? Going through all these articles and social media posts, it became pretty clear this wasn't just some tech issue. It was like a whole social phenomenon.
Right.
We're seeing AI just become part of everything, like at an insane speed.
Uh-huh.
And this outage, it was like pulling on a thread and watching the whole thing unravel.
It's like we totally took it for granted, expected it to always be there.
Totally.
Like electricity or running water, then boom, the lights go out.
Yeah.
What surprised you the most about how people reacted?
Well, the range of emotions, honestly.
Yeah.
There was panic, of course, especially for people who, like, use ChatGPT for their job.
Right.
Worried about deadlines, losing clients, like how are they going to work without their AI assistant? It's a reminder that for a lot of folks, this isn't just a fun toy to play with. It's, like, essential to how they make a living.
There were some comments about people thinking they'd been banned from ChatGPT personally.
Oh,
It's
really?
like they did something wrong, almost like they'd formed an emotional attachment to this software. Do you think that's part of what makes these outages so unsettling, you know?
Yeah, I think it's definitely part of it.
Okay.
We've gotten so used to instant access, always being connected, and these AI tools feel more and more personalized. So when that connection is broken, it's not just inconvenient.
Yeah.
It feels like a personal loss.
And speaking of connection, one thing that surprised me was how this outage almost created a sense of community.
Oh, interesting.
People sharing their experiences online, commiserating, joking about it.
Yeah.
Like we were all in it together.
It's like everyone huddling around the radio during a power outage, right?
Exactly.
We use humor to cope with the unexpected. And I think it also shows we're all kind of realizing that we're in this together, you know?
Yeah.
This weird new world where AI is just everywhere.
Okay, so we've talked about the feelings, the sense of reliance, this like community that popped up. But let's get practical for a sec. You mentioned some alternatives to ChatGPT. Are those really like viable options if or when this happens again? Are we all going to switch to Claude and become poets?
Hmm. Not necessarily poets, but it does make you think about backups, you know? Like Claude, for example, is great for creative stuff, while A Dungeon is more for interactive stories.
Okay.
They each have their own strengths and weaknesses, just like ChatGPT.
So it's like having a toolbox with different AI tools for different jobs.
Right.
But does that mean we should be spreading our reliance around, not putting all our faith in one system?
It's definitely something to consider.
Yeah.
You know, this outage showed the risk of depending too much on one platform.
Uh-huh.
So yeah, diversifying our AI toolkit could help with that.
Okay.
But it also means we got to be more, I guess, informed about what's out there and how to use them.
Right. Makes sense. But let's be real, most people aren't going to become AI experts overnight. So for the average person listening, what's the takeaway? How do we deal with AI being so powerful, yet also potentially so unreliable?
That's the question, right? I think the key is to, like, approach AI with a healthy dose of skepticism
Okay.
and be ready to adapt. Don't assume any tool is perfect or that it'll always be there. Look at alternatives, stay informed, and most importantly, don't let AI do all your thinking for you.
Stay in the driver's seat, even with these super powerful tools.
Exactly.
But going back to that upstream provider thing, what can we learn from that part of the outage?
It shows just how connected everything is. You know, we depend on this huge web of systems.
Right.
And if one part fails, it can have these ripple effects everywhere.
Like we're all connected by invisible digital threads.
Yeah, exactly. And as AI gets more integrated into important stuff like transportation, healthcare, even energy, this interconnectedness becomes even more crucial and maybe even more vulnerable. We need to be thinking about more resilient systems, both in terms of the tech itself and in our own ability to adapt when things go wrong.
So it's not just about having backup AI tools, it's about having backup plans for our backup plans.
Yeah.
It's like being resourceful, adaptable, maybe even a little old-fashioned in how we solve problems.
We can't forget about human ingenuity, critical thinking, all that.
Right, that's a great point. But let's shift gears a bit and go back to those user reactions. One thing I noticed was people calling ChatGPT their new intern, even their virtual friend.
Oh, yeah.
It's like they're forming real connections with this AI, even though it's just an algorithm, right?
Yeah, it's fascinating, isn't it? It shows the power of language and our need to connect. Even with all its complexity, ChatGPT is basically a communication tool.
Yeah.
It can write text, answer questions, even have these conversations that feel meaningful.
And in a world where, real human connection can feel so fleeting, especially online, I can see how someone might find comfort in talking to an AI, always there, always listening, never judges you.
That's a great point. It makes you think about loneliness. what companionship even means these days, and if AI can really fulfill those emotional needs.
It's like science fiction becoming reality.
Right.
And it's not just the positive emotions. Some comments showed real anxiety, even grief, over ChatGPT being gone,
Oh, wow.
like they lost a friend.
It's another layer to think about. As AI gets better at mimicking human emotions, we need to be careful about how it affects our own well-being, our relationships, even our sense of self.
It's a lot to unpack, and I feel like we're just scratching the surface here. But what are the key takeaways for our listeners? If they've been following along, what do you want them to remember?
Well, the big takeaway I'd say is that AI is changing our world fast,
Mhm.
and this ChatGPT outage gives us a peek at both the amazing potential and the possible downsides of this change.
Mm.
We have to be aware of the risks of relying on it too much, the importance of thinking for ourselves, and the need to stay informed and adaptable as AI keeps evolving.
And maybe even more importantly, being aware of how AI affects our own minds, our relationships, even who we are.
Absolutely. It's not just the outside changes, it's the internal ones too.
It's a weird, exciting, and sometimes unsettling journey we're all on together. And this whole thing with ChatGPT, it's like a chance to pause, think, and maybe adjust how we approach this powerful tech.
Well said. And on that note, I think it's time to wrap up this deep dive.
Yeah.
We've covered a ton today, from the technical stuff to the bigger picture of how AI is changing society and the ethical questions it raises.
Definitely. But before we go, I want to leave our listeners with one final thought.
Ooh, I like these cliffhangers.
What do I have for you? Okay, so this whole deep dive, we've been looking at the external impacts of the ChatGPT outage, right? The tech disruptions, the social stuff, the ethics.
Yeah.
But what about the internal impact?
Interesting. What do you mean?
I'm talking about the impact on our own minds, our thinking, our sense of self. As we get used to relying on AI for information, for making decisions, even for creative ideas, what happens to our own brain power? Does it get weaker? Does it adapt? Does it change in ways we don't even realize?
That's a really big question.
It is.
And I think it's one we're going to be wrestling with for a long time.
Yeah.
As AI becomes more and more a part of our lives, it's going to have a huge impact on our minds, our identities.
And that's where things get really interesting and maybe a little scary,
Mm-hmm.
because it's not just AI changing the world, it's AI changing us as humans.
That's something to think about for sure. Maybe the biggest takeaway from this whole deep dive is that AI isn't just a tool.
Right.
It's a mirror, showing us our hopes, our fears, our dreams.
I love that. And with that image in mind, let's say goodbye to our listeners. Thanks for joining us on this deep dive, and check out the show notes for links to the stuff we talked about and resources for finding other AI tools to try out.
Until next time, keep those minds curious and keep those algorithms in check.
And if you find yourself relying a bit too much on ChatGPT, maybe take a break, go for a walk, have a chat with a real person.
Good idea.
You might be surprised what you discover.
That's great advice. Remember, the best AI is the kind that helps us be more human.
Perfectly said. Until next time, stay curious, stay informed, and stay human. That AI mirror idea really makes you think, are WEE shaping AI, or is it starting to shape US?
It's a two-way street, for sure.
Mm.
We're putting all our knowledge into it, our creativity, even our biases, but then it comes back at us with new information, new ways of thinking. It's this crazy feedback loop that's getting faster and faster.
And sometimes it feels like we're not in control anymore, like we're getting swept away. This outage, it was a reminder that even the smartest AI can be fragile, unreliable, maybe even a little unpredictable.
It definitely made people nervous, and I get it. It's easy to feel safe when something just works all the time, but this showed us that technology can break down, and sometimes those breakdowns have big consequences.
Especially when we're so reliant on it. We've talked about alternatives, like Claude and A-Dungeon,
Right.
but it doesn't seem like any of them can do as much as ChatGPT, at least not yet.
That's true. ChatGPT is still the most versatile one out there.
Yeah.
But this outage, it might actually push things forward.
Oh, how so?
Well, it could make developers create more robust, more reliable, easier to use alternatives.
Okay.
Competition is good for progress, right? And this whole thing could be a wake-up call for the entire industry.
So maybe something good will come out of this, even though it was a pain in the short term.
Exactly. Challenges make us rethink things, explore new options, find creative solutions.
Yeah.
This outage could be a turning point, a time to figure out our relationship with AI and how to move forward in a smarter way.
Okay, so we've talked about AI being fragile, the need for other options, the potential for things to get better.
Right.
But what about the individual listener? What advice would you give someone who's feeling a bit uneasy about all this, less confident in AI after this whole outage?
Well, first I'd say, don't freak out. This was just a reminder that AI is still new and there will be problems along the way. But that doesn't mean we should give up on it altogether.
Right.
AI can be a really powerful tool for good, but we got to use it carefully, be aware, and think for ourselves.
So what does that look like practically? Give us some tips.
Okay, one thing is to diversify, like we talked
Mhm.
about. Don't just use ChatGPT. Try different AI tools, experiment, see what works for you.
Like having a backup generator, just in case.
Exactly. But it's also about how we think, right?
Mm-hmm.
Be critical of AI. Don't just believe everything it says. Question its assumptions. Think about its biases. Double check what it tells you with other sources.
So be an active participant, not just a passive consumer.
Exactly.
Right.
And lastly, don't be afraid to unplug every now and then. Step away from the screens, do things in the real world, reconnect with your own intuition and creativity.
Yeah.
The more grounded we are in our own human experience, the better we'll be at navigating this whole AI world.
That's great advice. It's a reminder that AI should make our lives better, not replace them.
That's the goal. It's about finding the right balance, where AI helps us be more creative, more productive, more connected, without making us less human.
I think that's a good place to wrap up this deep dive.
Yeah.
We started with this outage and ended up talking about some pretty big questions about the future of AI and where we fit in.
It's been a fascinating conversation, and I hope our listeners got something out of it.
Me too. And if you're curious to learn more, be sure to check out the show notes for all the links and resources we talked about.
And remember, as AI keeps changing, the important thing is to stay informed, stay engaged, and stay human.
Couldn't have said it better myself. Thanks for joining us on this deep dive into the world of AI. Until next time.